All right. Thank you all for coming. Today we're going to talk about two major subjects. One is taxes. Doesn't everybody love taxes? And the other is liability. Taxes and liability. Arguably two of the biggest issues that face any small business. Okay? So what we're basically going to refer to is now, I don't have a computer in here with a spell check, so if I misspelled something, would you guys just please be kind and tell me? But economic efficiency engineering.
Academic.
Did I spell it wrong? Well, I did, didn't I? See? I did that just to see if you were awake.
It's no. Not an E, it's a no.
If it's on camera, you gotta get it right.
So two more of us passed.
All right, well, I normally refer to this as something much simpler. I just call it EQ.
Okay.
E to the third power, all right? I submit that it doesn't really matter how much money you earn. It matters how much you keep. So people can earn gajillions of dollars, but if they don't get to keep it, what good is it? All right? Now, Austin, everybody's eavesdropping in my presentation to you. And you're a presenter, and the reason I ask him to ask you to bring your significant other is because none of us like to make a one-pronged presentation, because there's no way in this world that you're going to be able to go tell her. And so at some point, we already know that I'm going to have to talk through this again. But since this is for you, I'm going to ask for your participation. I'll ask you to come up here because I'm going to go through a little skit here that's going to drive this point home. Now,
Okay.
now,
She
Austin,
had a meeting. She had a work event. She has the jobs.
okay, so now, Austin, I just want to interview you as an iconic young man who's starting to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it your goal to make less money this year than you did last year?
No,
Would you like to make more money this year than you did
I
last
would
year?
love to make more.
Okay, so since we understand that the more you earn, typically the more you have to pay in taxes, has that thought crossed your mind?
Yes.
Yes, of course. So,
Especially the business owner.
yeah. So Larry, what is the threshold where you graduate into the 39.6% tax bracket?
This is after tax season, so I completely forget, somewhere in that $300,000
Okay,
category.
so is it your aspiration to somehow get to $300,000 a year, which would be $25,000 a month, which would be a little, really close to about $8,000 a week? Does that interest you?
Highly.
Okay.
That's doing
so-
pretty good in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, extremely well.
So the resident CPA just told us that threshold brings us to 39.6% federal tax. I didn't count all the other taxes, it's just federal tax, okay? So if it's okay with you, just for easy arithmetic, I'm gonna round that to 40%. Would that be okay?
Sure.
That 0.4% of 300,000,
Yeah.
might buy you a nice weekend or something, but we'll just round it up to
Yeah.
40, is it okay?
Definitely.
Well, we need an uncle here. We need an uncle, and Bernie, you look like the most appropriate uncle for this little skit, so would you come up? Yeah, we're gonna enhance
Uncle
that.
Bernie.
No, we're gonna see if anybody recognizes Uncle Bernie when we have him put these
Uncle
on.
Sam.
Right.
There. Now, Austin, I want you to meet your favorite uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle?
How you doing?
Okay. And the old
See you in
posters,
April, yeah.
and the old posters always said, "I want you." See the sign in the middle of this $100 bill? Now this is big money, and we put wings on it because it seems like money talks, it's always saying goodbye. So I'm going to give an illustration here as if you are making 300,000, okay? The very first thing that occurs, well, this is your money, awesome. Very first thing they do is they take 40% of that. So does that look close enough? 40%?
A little that way.
Oh, no, that, I had to have something left for the rest of the presentation. I was actually doing this one time for a doctor, and his little girl started crying, and I said, I didn't orchestrate that, but she's crying because this amount of money would educate her. But we're gonna give that to the favorite uncle, so give that to your uncle.
All right.
Okay, now, he must really be a favorite uncle because now we just took care of the federal tax. Now there's a state tax. The state tax doesn't say, well, we'll tax you on what's left. They're gonna pretend that that's still there, all right? So this is state tax. Okay, would you give that to your favorite uncle? Okay, now we have FICA. You know what FICA is? It's Social Security tax.
Yeah.
And if you're self-employed, you get to pay that. If you're employed by an employer, they pay 7.5%, you pay 7.5%. That comes up to a certain point, there's a threshold and you can reach Social Security maximization. But just for sake of illustration, this is your FICA, okay? Give that to your uncle, would you please? Okay, now we have local tax, all right? So, well, your uncle's really, you really love this uncle, don't you?
Not much.
Are you-
Does the uncle love him?
Is anybody feeling any pain? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Okay. Now, with what's left, you want to go buy a car or a home theater or whatever, and the state has now decided that anytime you consume something, you got to pay 7% for that. Okay. So,
Keep it going.
all right. Now hold all that up, would you, Uncle Sam?
Wow.
He really is your favorite uncle, isn't he? Well, thank
Better
you,
get
Uncle
Christmas
Sam.
gifts.
Thank you, Austin. All
Lucky
right,
we don't
so-
live in California.
Now, you can keep this as a souvenir and you take that home and show what happens
Right.
when we take care of your favorite uncle. Because I submit you're probably not really interested in taking care of the uncle, you're more interested in taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Did I have anybody's attention? That is reality. And because of the innocuous way they drift us into slumber, saying, well, that's just the way it is. I actually had a client said, well, the accountant says, well, if you earn more money, you just have to pay more taxes. She says, is there anything we can do? I said, I thought you'd never ask. So now let's talk about, since everyone in here understands being self-employed, having your own company, I want to talk about some things that occur to most everybody. Usually what happens is success overtakes us and bites us on the heels. Do you think that the youngest man in the room, do you think that he has sat down at his desk and said, you know, I want to be successful, but I want to strategize how my success could reduce my taxation? Or do you think that he's like all of us when, you know, I went in the insurance business in 1981, I was 25 years old. And I literally thought about going and getting some gray to comb into my hair because I looked like a baby. And I knew what I was talking about, but I kept talking to healthcare professionals, and I had kids my age. They couldn't imagine I didn't know what I was talking about, and I was selling disability insurance. At 25 years old, Dr. Swint said, if Randy's coming to see you, he'll be here at 6:30 in the morning, and I lived an hour away. I mean, I was driven. What I'm going to show you today, I had no idea. Didn't even have the capacity to have the thought. What happens? You start making money, and all of a sudden you wake up and there's a tax bill. And then you got quarterly estimates, and then you got this, and then you got that. And I was speaking to a young doctor the other day. He says, yeah, Randy, he says, I've already sent in $200,000. My accountant just told me the other day I got to send in another 100. He says, I'm really ready to talk to you. The sad part is I tried to talk to him 5 years ago. What happened? He's now making $4,000 an hour. If you take 50 weeks and 40 hours, that's 2,000 hours. He's making $800,000. What happened? Success came up and bit him in the heels. So here, I'm looking at the room, and particularly to Austin, and saying, Austin, how about if you take all the gray hair and the stray hair men in the room and we give you some help so that you don't fall into that being bitten in the heels like we have. And let me talk about some of the things that happens, just the pitfalls that just, in our country, you can just decide you're going to go into business, and it's real easy to get in the business. Then you become obscenely successful, and then you're like, oh my goodness, I got to write a check. So here's what happens. We have sole proprietorships. That's where, Bill, you just decided I'm just going to go out and start a business. And all the money comes in, all the money goes out. It's just sole proprietorship. Then we have a few people say, well, I am gonna go start an S corporation. Anybody ever heard of an S corporation? Okay, S corporation is wonderful if you're doing capital investment and you have a lot of deductions. Because if Bill starts this office here and he buys all this office furniture and all that stuff and he has an S corporation, all this deduction, all the losses flow right through to his personal social security number. Feel free to correct me on anything I say. That's why we have a CPA here, because I want to make sure that it's validated with everything I say to you. All right, then we have people say, well, I've graduated, I am going to have an LLC. LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. So I'm just going to spell it out. Lit.
Go with LLC.
Limited.
Yeah.
Save yourself some trouble.
LLC, everybody knows what it means.
Okay. Now, this is a great idea, but if it's still taxed as an S corporation, it's just this thing with a different hat on. Okay? So now, the government doesn't call it this. This is kind of my little statement. I call these shoot-through entities. So the arrow goes right through it, and guess what? The dollars are still taxed. Are you with me? They're shoot-through, meaning that I've got all this, and when you get to this level, now you're filling out 2 tax returns. So you get to pay the accountant more money for another return, and if you're taxed as a C corporation, then you end up with a double tax. If there were a way to have a less painful situation than this, you'd probably be interested, wouldn't you? Okay. So I want to show you some concepts. I want to give you just a tiny bit of history so that you understand how this has evolved in my thought process. I went in the insurance business in 1981, and in the insurance industry, whether you're at an industry function, an association function, or a company function, they have one thing in mind, and that is sell more product. Sell more product. We brought you on this trip to Hawaii. Please go home and sell more product so we can take you to Tahiti next year. Sell more product. Okay? One day, my friend Larry said, Randy, I think you would be interested in this other concept called process selling instead of product selling. Product is an insurance product, selling a product for a company. A process could accomplish some of the same goals, maybe even some better goals, and we could learn the process. In the process, we're not being fiscally irresponsible, meaning that we still have to have insurance on our car. We still should have insurance on our house. We probably should still have insurance on our life because we want to be fiscally responsible. But when we talk about the taxes that we just handed to our favorite uncle here, if there's a way to avoid some of those taxes, there's more money to educate children, there's more money to give money into the kingdom. You know, we're all believers in this room, you know, let's do some good things with our money. So I learned a process. So I want to give you an overview of the process. Now, everything we're going to talk about today is acid tested by something called the real world application. What does real world application mean? Did I dream this up sitting in this office to come up with a strategy, or does this strategy exist somewhere else? A real world application. So that's the acid test. I submit that anything I say, you be thinking, does this exist somewhere else? So I'm going to start out with the first. I'm going to give you the easy real world application. I want to ask you, if I form an LLC, normally we call this a no asset. So this LLC that we're going to form, I want to liken this LLC, which is just a conduit through which dollars flow. I want to liken this to the story about General Motors. Now, do you think that General Motors at one time was the largest corporation, not in Detroit, not in Michigan, not in the United States, it was the largest corporation in the world? You think they probably have done a few things right. Do you think that they did something right when they decided to save a few dollars on an ignition switch that now they're spending, what, $1 billion to clean up the mess, mop up the scraps? So if General Motors can lose $1 billion in a quarter, does a real world test tell us that you could lose money in a C corporation? It's a rhetorical question. Of course you can. So I'm going to call this LLC. I'm going to call it not GM LLC. Now we're not picking on any single industry in the room here, but you get the idea. Now this LLC has a big funnel. Well, what do you suppose goes into the funnel? Dollars. Dollars from whatever you do to generate income for you and your people. Where's my black marker? I get it. So these dollars, thank you, these dollars go into the No Asset LLC. In this case, we're calling it the not GM LLC. Now the first thing is there's no assets. Typically, you go get an S Corp or you go get a C Corp, you go get an LLC, and then you want to go buy your computer and your furniture and your cell phone and all your equipment, and you put that inside the LLC. I submit to you that if the LLC has no assets, it's not a target. Because although we're primarily going to talk about how to take the favored uncle and make him a little less favored, the sideline is we have another problem with liability. Do you know that every one of us is one phone call to a hungry attorney away from being a defendant in a civil litigation? Every one of us. Because you looked at somebody wrong, or you served, we gave you a cup of coffee and you spilled it in your lap, and now all of a sudden it's Bill's fault because he served hot coffee in his office. And if I choose to sue you, Bill, I don't have to win for you to lose. You got to pay all this money to defend yourself. I don't have to win for you to lose. So what if I set it up to where you're not a target? How about if, let me just give this illustration. Since we live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we see advertisement, every news and for Glazer and Ebbs and Blackburn and Green. Now, this is not hot. No, careful, don't spill that coffee on us.
Well, I'm not thinking about it.
At least you wore a black shirt, it'll blend in. So, who knows what those two attorney firms specialize in?
Personal injury.
Personal injury. They're ambulance chasers. They're looking for somebody. Now, do you think that Blackburn and Green cruised through the worst trailer park in Fort Wayne with a rusted out 15-year car in front of it with a screen door hanging with one hinge? You think they're looking through there for defendants? No. They're looking for deep pockets insurance companies. So if I can superimpose myself into the trailer trash camouflage, then I'm less of a target than somebody that's living large and doing all that, right? So it's what I'm illustrating here. So we put no assets in this LLC. Now you come to my LLC and you say, well, I'm going to take that LLC down because, let's say that this is a Donald Trump looking office and you got gold, Corinthian gold embossed on your walls, and this desk is French provincial from the 14th century, and there's $1 million of furniture in here. Well, people come in here and they go, well, Bill's living large, you know what? If I spilled coffee in Bill's office, he's a target. Not if there's no assets in here. If there's no assets in here, how could this possibly be a target? You perceive that it's a target, but it's not a target because there's no assets. Now, what else happens with this? We typically have a non-owner. Non-owner managed. The non-owner is the manager. Now, an LLC is fabricated of two components, members and managers. In Indiana and many states, you can have a member who is also a manager, meaning the owner also manages it. But you can have a manager-managed LLC. That means in this illustration, Bill is the member, he's the owner of the LLC, and Bernie's the manager. Okay? So in this case, I've removed the liability.
Managers keep the money too.
Exactly right. And managers take the money home to mom. All right? So now we've got a non-owner manager. So this is a shell. This is a conduit through which money flows. And guess what? Bill doesn't own it. I mean, in this case, Bill owns it and Bernie doesn't own it. The dollars go in, the dollars come out, and we're gonna do things with these dollars more efficiently than we could have if we had a shoot-through, all right? Are you tracking with me so far? Now, every entity, whether it's General Motors or not General Motors, every entity can have ordinary custom business expenses. You agree with that? We can have leases, we can have management fees, we can have expenses for doing business, we can have dining expenses, we can have entertainment expenses, on and on and on. Just let your mind go wild. Why? Because although we're going to complete a tax return for this LLC, do we want to pay taxes on these dollars that go through this LLC?
You don't have to.
Not if you don't have to. Great answer, Steve. So, what do you think happens when we get close to the end of the year, whether it's a fiscal year or a calendar year? We look in here and we say, well, we've got $10,000 left over. What are we going to do with this $10,000? Well, on my watch, if I have $10,000 extra dollars, I don't want to go pay corporate taxes on it because I'm going to be looking around. I'm going to say, Bill, you know what? Your chances, your choices are pay the uncle or get more stuff. Well, duh. We're going to get more stuff. We're going to trade in this Formica desk for, you know, a solid walnut desk or solid cherry desk. Why? Because if the choice is to pay taxes on this, then why wouldn't we create another lease that takes this off? Because if we let this money flow to your pocket, you're going to have a personal tax issue. Do you see that? All right. So this, not GM LLC, can have various places where the money comes out. So in this scenario, even though it was a brutal tax season with Obamacare and all the things that happened, I'm sure you can help me with a couple of these statements here. So can I put some management fees in here? Could I have some management fees? So we're going to put management fees. Okay, so management fees. So, Bill, you got 3 daughters, 3 sons-in-law, a son, and how many grandkids?
7.
So you've been replenishing the earth. So you have a lot of potential managers, don't you? Is there any rules on that you can have managers? Could they be 14 years old? Could a manager be 20 years old? So imagine this. Now, the Not GM LLC is coming out and sending this to managers, plural. This isn't to be confused with Bernie over here, who's the manager of the LLC. This is management fees that he is subletting to work on the Not GM LLC. Now, what about leases? Could we have leases to come out of here? All right. So we've got another opening that comes out, and these dollars flow out as leases. If Austin, if you don't mind me asking you this, you told me the other day you showed up at a car lot and you said, I have X to pay, find something that matches this amount of money, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, and so for sake of illustration, was it 600?
600.
600 a month. So Austin decided to go. You actually bought that car.
I did buy, yeah.
You bought the car, so he's spending $600 a month on a car. So that's $7,200 a year, right? Now, what happens with a car? I've already said the answer, but I'm going to ask the question rhetorically anyway.
Appreciate it.
Depreciates. So what is the one item in our culture, in flat land, no public transportation, Fort Wayne, Indiana, that each of us have to own that just siphons money out of our pocket? What is it?
Car.
A car.
Vehicle.
So if I could show you a way to earn money while driving a car, you'd probably be interested, wouldn't you? Right. So we're going to show that in a moment. I want to lay some foundational work here. So you see these side funnels, and you understand now, surely you understand, that I can be exhaustive on this. I can come up with what else comes to mind besides leases and management fees? What's something else that comes to mind that we could put on that as a side funnel besides personal income?
I'm thinking, when I'm 66 years old. You mean to siphon off?
To siphon off, not to have ordinary income.
Larry, we pay less taxes, man, that's affecting social security and Medicare and all that, we want to pay taxes.
We're gonna get to that in a minute. Okay, so management fees and leases,
Those are the two big
yeah,
ones.
these are the big ones. I'm just suggesting that you have your imagination working, and then it's like, well, Randy, would that work? Would that work? Greg, could I use an illustration for a minute?
Okay.
You know, the other day I asked you on the phone, have you considered maybe you're gonna go start another restaurant, you're gonna go purchase some equipment and go into the restaurant business, right?
I was gonna say like just you know like purchasing of equipment and stuff like that. Any type of
Right.
and not leasing it, but financing.
Well, we're gonna talk about leasing in a minute, that's where we're going with this.
Well, yeah, because I know back in the day, a friend of mine, they actually created two companies in one, because they leased their restaurant equipment actually from themselves,
Right,
from the restaurant. So
Right.
what they did, they bought the equipment, created the equipment company, and then turned around and leased that equipment for their restaurant.
exactly. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to Bill and his tribe of offspring. Do you think that 7 grandkids could probably use a college fund? Just saying. So we got the 7 grandkids. Leasing company. Leaseco, I'm just gonna call it Leaseco. All right? Now, if the grandson owns this desk and grandpa's not GM LLC leases it, does that come to Bill as ordinary income? No. Did it bypass all that stuff we gave to our granddad, our favorite uncle? It bypasses all that and goes into that college fund of that kid, okay? The most absurd or the most amazing illustration of this that I've ever heard of, and Larry, I think you're the one that told me about it, is that an Amish man bought a horse. It's farm equipment. He leased the horse, similar to what you're saying. So if this is a pair of Levi's, you got 2 pockets here, and we can get money to come from here to here, and it's a deductible event, then we win, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about. So now we've figured out that the management fees can go to managers that he sublets in the manager managed LLC. We've also figured out that we can have lease dollars come out of here. Now, we still want to have enough money come out as ordinary income, because which of you knows the answer to this? Why would we want some ordinary income? Besides to pay for, we gotta pay for groceries, we gotta pay for household living expenses. But why would we want some ordinary income? It's so we can make a contribution to retirement accounts. Now, we just talked about our favorite uncle a minute ago. What do you think the chances are, 40 years from now, that you're gonna have a Social Security check? What do you think the chances are?
0.
Okay, so you're not quite as optimistic as the government would like you to be, but let's assume it's 0 for the moment. Do you think it might be prudent for you to lay some money aside, that's the Austin Fund, so that 40 years from now, you have some passive, some investment income?
Yes.
Makes sense, right?
100%.
So we have to have ordinary income in order to have a deductibility for any kind of retirement contributions. And today's seminar is not to talk about all those various things, but I'm going to tell you quickly that there's ways that you can get this LLC that you manage to hold hands with your personal situation and have both of them make a contribution to a retirement account.
That you can put your percentage on that you can put how much you want to invest.
Yeah, with limitations. There's guidelines on how much, because there's people who make $500,000 who put $250,000 away in that, and so there's threshold and ceilings. But rest assured, we know how to maximize those amounts that you can put in there. Okay? Did you have a comment about that? All right. So that's why we have to have some ordinary income. Now, did everybody drive a vehicle here today? Everybody here has a company, right? Okay, so not GM LLC could pay for the fuel, couldn't it? It could pay for the tires, it could pay for the oil change, it could pay for wiper blades, whatever. So using the car as an example, that's what I'm telling you, that's one of the things that you could do with this. So now, your aspiration is to get to 25 grand a month. We illustrated that in our beginning, right?
100 grand.
Could you just keep it simple, son? I'm just trying to teach a seminar here, you know. I mean, I realize you're a superstar and you're gonna shoot over Venus. We were all shooting for Mars, you're going over Venus, I understand that, but just for sake of illustration here.
25, yeah.
Okay,
It's good for
so we wanna get 25,000 a month into the not GM LLC. You don't mind having an LLC like this if I show you the benefits of it, would you?
No.
Okay, now I don't care if it's a car, I don't care if it's a draft horse, I don't care if it's restaurant equipment, I don't care if it's office furniture, I don't care if it's a $3,000 fountain pen, you know, I don't know what to tell you, Bernie, but, okay? I don't care what the equipment is. Equipment is equipment is equipment is equipment. I have done this for x-ray machines. I already told you the draft horse for the Amish. I've done it for cars, I've done it for, you think of a piece of equipment that you can use. It's kind of silly to do it for a $300
I've
self.
got a ton of stuff in mind right now.
Great, so keep your mind working, but we agreed that the biggest hole into which we pour money in our culture and the requirement with no mass transit is that a car is the biggest loser that all of us have to deal with, right?
Right.
All right, so now I'm gonna draw a line here because this doesn't necessarily require grandkids. You're too young to have grandkids, so I'm gonna show you a way to do it without grandkids.
Or kids.
Or kids, it doesn't even require kids.
Or spouse.
We're going to have over here, we're gonna have a lease company. Do you think that maybe we already have a lease company set up that will work with this program? Do you think maybe we already have that? If I'm gonna show it to you, we already have it, right? Not my company, but we have a company that'll cooperate with this. Typically, people go to the lot and they do what the young man did and says, you know, I got this much a month, put a car into that. But for the moment, let's say that we're prudent and we decided to go write a check for the equipment. In this case, it's gonna be a car. And let's say, just for sake of easy arithmetic and easy calculation, let's say that you're gonna drive a $50,000 car. So, remember the left pocket, right pocket. We're assuming that you're not doing a debt service, or that you went and wrote a check for a car. But you didn't write a check to the car company. You wrote a check to the lease company. And the lease company buys the car on your behalf. Now they have something that's called a 30% net lease. And what 30% net means is at the end of 2 years, you've paid 70%, which would have been 70%, which would be $35,000. All right. So in year one, you know what? I want these arrows to be definitive, so I'm gonna make a different color. This is going to be a debit to the lease, the not GM lease company. So in year one, we're going to take $17,500 out of the non-GM LLC, and we're going to send it over to the leasing company. So their balance now has been reduced by $17,500. Guess what? $17,500 just avoided all of Uncle Sam's money, because we avoided state, federal, and Social Security, state tax, city tax, local tax. All that was avoided by the $17,500 going over here. Now, So, what do you think we're gonna do year two? We're gonna send another $17,000 over to the leasing company. All right, now we're at 35,000. Do you agree with me? All right. Now, you've never taken title to this car yet, right? The leasing company owns this car. They are functioning on your behalf as if you're the bank or you're the lender. Your 50,000 is moved over here, and there's only two things that make money. You do know this, right? People at work and money at work. Now, you can take 50,000 and go over and give it to Steve, and he can give you an appropriate rate of return, or you could put 50,000 in this program, and you are the lender on this side and the borrower on this side. And I just avoided state, federal, and Social Security tax on $35,000, and they have sent you back 35,000. So the 35,000 came out of your Not GM LLC, and 35 of it's back in your pocket. All right. Now, the 2-year lease is up. Could I get you to drive the car for 3 years just for illustration? Would you drive the car for
Yeah.
1 more year? Okay. So now, because we've done this times 2, it equals $35,000. All right. So we have a balance of $15,000 on that car you're driving, right? Are you tracking with me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you go back to the leasing company and say, well, we got to get this off your books. So I would like to personally buy a discounted note, $15,000. So now, what are you doing? You're actually pulling money out of your pocket again to end this transaction. And now there's a $15,000 note with the leasing company for the same car that's still parked in your driveway, still titled to the leasing company, but their books are clean. Guess what? The government allows you to use what's called the fair market value. So if you have $15,000 invested in a car that cost $50,000 2 years ago, are you ahead of the game?
Yeah.
You have a $50,000. Okay, what is a $50,000 car worth 24 months out? Just pick a number.
25,000.
30,000.
30,000. Okay, so you're at 50% of the value of the car. Guess what? You can set the lease up in what the fair market value is. So now you write another lease, 30% net lease on 30,000. So this is the first transaction. Now we're at 30,000 with a 30% net lease, which means you're going to have to pay 21,000 against this 30,000. Are you tracking with me? All right. So year 1 of the lease number 2, you're going to pay half of that 21,000, which is $10,500. What happened? The LLC avoided state, federal, and Social Security tax on $10,500, right? Now we're at the end of the year, and we've decided the ashtray's dirty, you can't live with it anymore, you gotta trade cars. Okay, what do you think the car is worth? When it was $50,000 3 years ago, it's 36 months, you know every oil change, you've changed the tires, you've done everything right. What's the car worth at the end of 3 years? Just somebody give me an estimation.
18,000.
So it's worth $18,000 now. What do we have left on the lease? Well, according to our arithmetic, we've only paid $10,500 on this car. You say, well, you know what? This time I'm going to let the LLC own the car for a week. So the LLC pays the balance of that car off. It'll be $20,500, right?
It's actually 19,500.
See, spell check, arithmetic check, whatever. The concept is what I'm here to get, right?
He's just seeing if you guys are paying attention. Don't let him fool you.
He knows I do arithmetic in my head faster than most people use a calculator. All right, so now Scott said it's worth $18,000. I'm going to pretend that it's a special car for sake of illustration, that somebody's going to come back and give us $20,000 for that car on Craigslist. The money on Craigslist comes right back into here. So the money went out, the money went back in. And now what? you got that 20,000 back in your account. You drove the car for 3 years, Austin, and you've at least broken even, if not made money, right? Are you tracking with me? Okay, now we forgot one little consideration, didn't we? Remember when your uncle was up here and we cut that flyaway $100 bill? And you ended up with about 30% of what was left? Well, we're functioning in a 30% net spendable income and using a 30% net lease to fix it. So look what happened. 35,000, 45,000, 45,500. I almost 500 to be corrected again. So $45,000 avoided. Just say 50,000 against 70%. I mean against the 70% tax that we just paid. We just saved over $25,000 in taxes by doing this concept. Are you with me? And we sold the car and broke even. Now you got money in the bank. You need a new car. Can you imagine that you're not going to go do this all over again?
Every time.
So you broke even or made money to drive a car, and we agreed that that's the biggest hole into which we pour money. So now, if this strategy will help you on a car, which is the biggest glut of financial disparity, imagine what it does for, I don't know, what's the life of Russian equipment? Is it 8 years, 10 years?
Yeah, 28 and 10.
Okay, so if we did this 8 and 10 year lease on the grill and the hood and the fryer and all that stuff that you do and the tables and the chairs and the art on the wall, there's virtually no limit to that. So what happens in this scenario? I'm talking fast because you guys are all bright. I'll get to you in just a second. Between our management fees, okay, are the grandkids in a lower bracket or a higher bracket than grandpa?
Oh, they're much lower.
Much lower. So we reduce taxes on management fees. We avoided taxes on lease expenses. And we have enough ordinary income to create a retirement account so we don't depend on the government. No, your question.
Is the lease company a company that we create?
No, we have a lease company already.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't own it. I bring deals to them, and if you're going to be the lender and you're going to be the borrower, they have no risk. All they do is handle the paperwork for a little initiation fee and a little bit of interest. I mean, it's just an exercise for them.
And the tax deduction is there because you paid the 50,000 in. If you didn't do the 50,000, you wouldn't be able to deduct it the same way.
You can deduct everything that comes out here, Steve.
Okay.
Over here, the lease company is building in your sales tax incrementally, so you don't pay sales tax on that whole 50,000, which would be 3,500 when you drove the car away. They incrementally bill you that as you pay it.
Is your example based on having the money to buy the car first from the lease company?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But we can do it if you're credit worthy enough to get the car. But in the illustration, we like to show you how to harness your own money to where it's working more efficiently for you. Now,
Management fees. Does it sound like a manager when my 4-year-old granddaughter tells me, isn't it time for you to go to work, Papa?
Ooh.
exactly right, man. I'm telling you, you guys
3
just-
times a week she says, Papa, you need to go to work.
Wow.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I've shown you this. I've shown you some things. I've shown you how to get the ordinary income out. Basically, when this strategy is fully employed, remember, we're not limited to one lease or one asset. So if you want to say, okay, this is a room full of booths and tables and chairs, okay, that could be one lease. The fryer and the grill and the hood and the kitchen, that could be another lease. Okay, the van with the name of the restaurant on the side of it that goes and does catering, that could be another lease. There's no limit to how many leases you could have. So the more dollars you bring into this machine, the more we work to get this pulled out. And if you're happy about this, then compliment this man. If you're unhappy about this, then tell him he should have never taught me this, because that's what I've done for 15 years now, is said, okay, now if this all works correctly, we've significantly reduced our taxes and we've significantly reduced our need for insurance. Because, I don't have time to go into it today, the other thing we say is, well, where do we put our ownership? We put our ownership where all those grandkids, I'm making an assumption, when you stop breathing, you want your kids and grandkids to own your stuff. So we put things in ownership, in a partnership where those children and grandchildren all own it already before you stop breathing. And then, when you stop breathing, probate is a breeze. Why? Because they already own it. Is there a tax? No, because you gave it away while you were breathing, and now they own it. Papa stops breathing. It's just a simple transfer. Now, I really appreciate y'all coming. I really appreciate you listening to this. Obviously, I've planted a few seeds, and y'all are going to have some curiosity. And I'd like to draw my remarks to a close for the sake of this was just an overarching thought process that I'd like to share with you. And if you would write something on that paper, I mean, like, maybe I don't do arithmetic, can't spell right or whatever, I'd appreciate that. And thank you all for coming.